Hey YouTube, wanted to show you something I made last night, and I also have a question for anybody who might know a little bit about canning. It's a problem I don't have with quart jars when I'm canning, but a problem I do have with pint jars, and I'll show you what I mean. Let me show you what I made. I mean, it's supposedly superficial, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect your food, which I found it doesn't. It's just a texture issue. And here, I'll show you what I made. Well, I made 21 pints of this. 21 pints of this. This is upside down. This is pinto beans. I made 21 pints. This is 3 consecutive canning batches. Now in the wide mouth jars, I didn't have this problem as much. The beans didn't drink up all the water that was in there with them, but with the narrow mouth jars, which I have some here, I don't know if you can see it or not. They do. They drink up the and I covered these when I put these in. I actually allowed for some expansion. The beans actually came up to about here, and the water was up to the band. Well, not the band, but the 1-inch mark, the ridge. And I didn't want to make the water any higher because in these little regular mouth jars you get a lot of siphoning if things decide to froth up on you while they're pressure canning, especially when the pressure is coming off. I don't get siphoning in these, so you know, those, and it's weird. It seems the wide mouth jars actually, they don't siphon as bad, and the beans don't tend to drink up all the water. In quart jars, I don't have that problem. That's 6 of them there that I made, and 3 of them there, and 12 of them there. Those are going away. That's long-term storage. I took the best of them that didn't absorb as much water, and I packed them up in there. And those are going. I have metal boxes that seal airtight. I put these in, and that's where the emergency foods are going to be stored, and that's where that batch is going. Those are for kitchen use, and these are going to my mother. She wants to try them, so I'm going to give her 3. And I darn near boiled out all the water out of that canner. One of the things that you can't do is you can't go from hot water to cold water in one of those cast aluminum canners. Anyway, getting back to it. What I was saying is you can't just put fresh cold water into a cast aluminum canner right after a canning batch, because you can cause it to warp or you can cause it to crack. So I had to keep using the same hot water, and batch 2 I topped it off. It was like less than 1/4 of an inch down. Batch 3, I darn near boiled all the water out of it without realizing it. It looked like there was plenty in there. It was still filled to the mark. But by the time the canner was done, there was less than 1/4 of an inch left in the bottom of that when I took all those jars out. So I think from now on I'm going to limit myself to 2 batch runs and not 3 batch runs. That uses a lot of water when you get to that 3rd batch. Plus the water gets more and more contaminated with anything that might siphon out. And we don't need that happening. But those came out, like I said, I canned from sun up to sundown. Beans, beans, beans. But now we have plenty that we can put in back storage if there's a hurricane, or if there's a power outage and we don't have any propane. We've got materials. Let me put my glasses on. It's getting very, very bright. That's better. One of the downsides of albinism is extreme sensitivity to bright light. You almost always have to have glasses if you're above room lighting, And caps help too, but that's another tangent I won't get off into. But just so you understand why I'm having to wear these. The light coming in through that window over there is getting extremely bright. Anyway, where was I? 21 cans. 21 cans. We actually did 23 cans. 2 seals failed at the end of processing. So those are, one of them is in the refrigerator, and the other one was used with some rice, and it was pretty good. So I would say that batch was a success, but that's the only major problem I have is I've noticed that when I do beans in pint jars, regular mouth jars, they almost always drink the first, they drink all the water off the top of the beans and then maybe an eighth of an inch below the beans. And what it does when that happens, and I've read, it says it doesn't affect the quality of the food, but what it does is it affects the texture because those beans that are sitting out of the water, they tend to dry out a little bit. And, they get a little hard. But otherwise, edible, no problems. Been last few years that I've had this canner, never had the problem with quarts, but I don't use a lot of quart jars of beans because once you open those, you have to use them. There is no putting it back up. You can put it in the fridge, and keep it there for so long, but once you open them, you have to use them. So with the pint jars, we just open enough for a meal, and however much we need, and we don't waste half of them or a third of them, and it all works out. But anyway, if you know an answer to that, let me know. And a friend of mine got me a dehydrator for my birthday, which is coming soon. It was kind of an early gift, and I'm very thankful for it. I was going to buy one next month, and he actually did me a very good favor by doing that. He allows me to get into the business of dehydrating a little faster than I would have otherwise, and I have a bit of lead time where I can actually learn to use it now. But I think the first thing I'm going to try, everybody and their brother does beef jerky. And you gotta be sure that you do it right, man. Dehydrating meats, I start reading up on it, I find out there's all kinds of ways you can mess it up. There's two methods that you can use, supposedly. You want to bring the internal temperature of the meat up to about 170, either before or after the dehydration process. And depending on which type of jerky you make, that dictates what you have to do, at what point you have to heat it up before dehydrating. And I think I'm also going to look into getting a meat slicer, because if I start doing jerkies and things like that, I want them to be consistent, and I'm going to do them on a large scale because beef jerky is something I really like, and I know that my wife likes it too. And we'll probably be making a lot of it. So having some consistency in its manufacture is a good thing. But mostly, the way I figure is, I've got a pressure canner for the meats and the low acid foods, and those will be jarred and stored. And for the vegetables and things like herbs, vegetables, fruits, we can use the dehydrator. You can dehydrate vegetables down, big old pile of vegetables dehydrates down little bitty. And you just put it in a jar with an oxygen absorber. And you can store that for quite a while after you've thoroughly dehydrated it, I'm not entirely sure of all the processing yet. I'm reading up on it, and I think I may take that along with me when I go to Houston just to do a batch. I want to try a batch and see how it comes out, Maybe we'll dehydrate some apples. She says she likes apples, and I like dried apples. And I just found out, supposedly none of the stores in our area carry just plain dried apples anymore for snacks. You can get them in granola stuff or mixed with other things, but apparently it's not a common product around here anymore. So we'll make some dehydrated apples, some dried apple snacks, and I may, my finger's slipping, about to drop this thing. I may go ahead and I may do some dried peaches, as I hear those are really good, and banana chips. I like banana chips, but she's not crazy about them, but I'll make a little bit for myself. And the other thing you can do is you can take vegetables and dehydrate them down to anything, store them in jars, and then when you want to make a stew or a soup, you just throw them into some boiling water. And you can dry and powder tomato, so there's your stew base, You store the powder in jars and then throw it into the water, and you have instant soup base ready to go. So all kinds of things there. It's going to be a whole new learning experience playing with this and getting the hang of making it work. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I've really enjoyed canning. I like pressure canning. I haven't gotten to do it near as much as I'd like to because that stuff costs money. You know, you have a lot of consumables involved in the process. You know, not just the food, but you've got the lids and you got to buy the jars. Of course, you start getting that back when you start reusing your jars, but you always got to buy lids, you know. But pressure canning allows you to put really good foods back, foods with protein in them and other things for emergencies or for long-term storage. You know, so that was my thoughts on the dehydrator as well. You know, not near as long term, you know, but better than short term. You can put dehydrated foods away, you know. And I figure from what I hear, if you vacuum bag them or use oxygen absorbers, you can extend their shelf life from weeks to months and even to years, from what I've read. And it just so happens I have a small vacuum sealer. It's not the best one in the world, but might have to get a couple of rolls of vacuum bags. But the thing will actually seal Ziploc bags flawlessly, so you know there's another thing I can pull a vacuum with and store. You just can't boil Ziploc bags. It's the only advantage really of food bags is whatever's in them you can throw it in boiling water like leftovers and it heats it up gently and then you just pour it out of the bag and eat it. But for long-term storage, either can be used. So looking into that. And my next canning batch, if I can find somebody to hold the camera while I do it, I may film that. As it stands, it's a very involved process, and you can't be holding a camera while you're doing all this. So as soon as I find somebody to help me film the next canning batch I do, I want to put that on YouTube and use that as an educational thing for people. And I'm running out of time, so I'm going to let y'all go. And when I start dehydrating, I'll see if I can't film that. I'll start dehydrating the fruit, and we'll put a video up. And I guess that's it. Take care, y'all.